Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Patch 3.19.1 is just around the corner. This is a major patch that GGG plan to bring out this week, and sometimes when they say this week, they actually mean same day, other times it means much closer to close of business Friday, New Zealand time. But in any case, it should be out either within the next 48 hours or very soon after that. This is going to contain a number of changes to the Lake of Kalandra content, to Arch Nemesis, and to a few other things, most notably Eldritch Currency, which I think is something that will be a big improvement. Anyways, let's go through the various changes. Firstly, the Lake of Kalandra changes. The Reflecting Mist is being increased in frequency by 50%. This is that lucky dip reward where Kalandra gives you 2 pieces of jewelry that are mirrored copies of each other. These are probably garbage 95% of the time, solid 4% of the time, and extraordinary 1% of the time. And a lot of the best jewelry that will exist in this league under 20 Divine Orbs will come from the Reflecting Mist. So this is something that's quite an improvement, and I think that getting it 50% more will mean that there'll be more of those good items going around in circulation. Additionally, this will help a lot with the challenge to pull various different types of jewelry out of Reflecting Mist, because that is something that I've been having a lot of trouble getting so far. I've only got one type of jewelry out of the Reflecting Mist for that challenge. Next, Breachlords spawned in the reflection of the Breachlord now spawn closer to the start of the breach. Basically, everything related to Breach in the Lake of Kalandra is extraordinarily dangerous and difficult at the moment. Even if it's only a difficulty 2 or 3, the number of monsters there is just overwhelming, especially if you get Esh, because Esh is the most dangerous of the Breach types. So I don't think this is going to be a huge improvement here. Obviously, it'll make it easier to kill a Breachlord if you're able to stay stable for the first 2 seconds, but if you're able to stay stable for the first 2 seconds, you are probably completely fine in that Breach encounter anyway, and killing the Breachlord was probably just a formality. Rock formations in the Lake of Kalandra now block projectiles, allowing you to hide from enemy attacks. This is a huge improvement. I really like the ability, when you don't outgear content, to try and outskill it. Widen some bridges connecting reflection tiles in the Lake of Kalandra. Thank you for this. This is something that has been one of those things that just irks you. Every time you go to the lake, the narrow bridges really irk you, and they also mean that you've got a lot less ability. Again, if you don't outgear content, you have a lot less ability to try and outplay it, because the bridges are this narrow choke point that's really difficult to deal with. Now you'll have a bit more space to dodge projectiles on it, or dodge other sorts of frontal cone attacks like some of the monsters have. League Reflections, where Kalandra is present, now have intro and outro dialogue. Yeah, that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's something, but it's not anything particularly important. Heralding minions is no longer going to be found in Delve. There are a couple of exceptions. They can still spawn in a couple of weird situations, corner cases like a Legion monolith within the Delve Mines, a Breach encounter within the Delve Mines, or a Beyond pack within the Delve Mines, but that's it. This is a really important change for Delve because Heralding Minions does not play well with Delve. There's a couple of other things that don't play very well with Delve. Heralding Minions is the very worst offender of them though. Rare monsters spawned during boss fights are now capped at 2 Arch Nemesis modifiers, and rare monsters that don't drop loot are similarly capped. This is definitely a big improvement. These felt fundamentally unfair in the fight against Kitava, and that included the map boss versions of Kitava, particularly actually the map boss version of Lava Lake. Lava Lake with a monster that spawns that has hasted and 3 mods was really nasty, because that hasted 3 mods monster becomes the super dangerous thing that you've got to kill quickly. I do think that hasted probably shouldn't be allowed to spawn during this situation, and there's a couple of others as well. I think that these same category of rare monsters should not be able to spawn hasted, they should not be able to spawn Bonebreaker, they should not be able to spawn Mana Siphoner, they should not be able to spawn Effigy. Those are the 4 that I think are really problematic in boss fights at the moment. Other than that, I think this change solves all of the issues with monsters that spawn in the middle of a boss encounter. Then the aura from the Executioner modifier and Verdant Spores from Healing Nova from Rejuvenating no longer affect player minions. A lot of players don't realize that the Verdant Spores debuff, which comes from Rejuvenating, is something that actually suppresses player healing, and it was also suppressing minion healing as well. This is something that was pretty rough. Players can deal with Verdant Spores. If you make a mistake and get hit by it, then you can disengage from the fight for a sec, or you can survive through the use of a life flask, or various other means. Minions don't have this option, and so I think it's a good idea to have the Verdant Spores no longer affect minions. Likewise, the Executioner mod that prevents most forms of life recovery when the monster is already over 50% life. This is something that is quite unfair on player minions. Again, it was getting a lot of player minions killed. The one that's really missing though is Corrupting Blood. Minions need mitigation for corrupting blood. This is the thing that every minion player is seeing their minions die to. It's corrupting blood. And what minions need is something like 85% less duration of corrupting blood on you, or something along those lines, so that they don't just fall over dead when there's a monster with Corruptor. Beyond changes. Beyond bosses have had their life nerfed very slightly, but the life of other Beyond monsters has been lowered by approximately 60%. These were overwhelmingly tanky compared to everything else in an instance. They'll be fine if the rewards were there. They kind of weren't. And I think that reducing them by 60% is a massive reduction, but it's probably what they need. Now you'll find that when Beyond rolls on a map, your attitude will be, oh yeah, I'll do that, not this again. Improve the outcome odds on Tainted Orb of Fusing, Jeweler's Orb, and Mythic Orb. So these are going to be buffed considerably. We don't know how much. I don't expect they'll be as strong as they were in Scourge League, because if they do buff Tainted Orbs of Fusing to the point that they're 50-50 like they were in Scourge League, then that's going to make regular Orbs of Fusing essentially worthless. And in doing so, it's going to feel like you've reduced the amount of loot in every map, because everyone's just going to remove regular fusings from their loot filters. So based on that, I don't think they'll go quite as far as that, but they could be 30%, 35%, 40%, and they'd be pretty good. Beyond bosses can no longer spawn in temporal incursions. That'd be something that's just disappointing when it happens. Other improvements and changes. Lower the damage dealt to minions by League monster skills and in-game map boss skills that felt punishing. For example, Shaper's Beam, Shaper's Slam, Tull's Barrage, many of Cirrus's skills, amongst many others. The main thing for Cirrus is those deatomization storms. They need to be 95% less damage to minions at least. They're designed to near instantly kill players. That's fine because it's so obvious to a player, don't go in this area, this is a bad zone. But for a minion, those minions are not very smart. Here's the big one. Eldritch Exalts, Eldritch Chaos, and Eldritch Annuls now drop in lower level areas, and also their drop rate has been buffed. These have been staggeringly rare drop anywhere things, as well as something that drops from the various Eldritch bosses. So the Black Star, the Infinite Hunger, the Eater of Worlds, and the Searing Exarch drop them. And then they're just staggeringly rare drops from regular monsters. I think they're maybe 20 times as rare as a Divine Orb or something like that. So much, much, much rarer. You almost never see them. I like to see these be somewhat common like they were in 3.17, precisely because they're not as powerful to players who have everything as full-on metamod crafting or Harvest Reforge Keep prefixes and things like that. For example, because they can't be used in conjunction with a double influenced, double elevated item, they're something a more typical player can actually use. They don't feel the need to sell them to someone else because it's not one of the most powerful crafting tools in the game. It's something that you can safely use without being too worried about the opportunity cost because they're reasonably affordable. That's why they've been such a good crafting tool, and why I'll be glad to see them be more common than they've been in the past. I like the general frequency of their drops in 3.17, although I didn't really like the mechanics of how they dropped then. I think they'd be better if they were available from more diverse content than just map bosses that have been augmented by certain altars. But in general, I think that this is going to be a good change. Marks applied to by a monster are now removed if you move a great distance away from the monster. This is a huge improvement. Lower the number of rare and magic monsters spawned during harvest boss encounters. That was fun while it lasted. By fun, I mean it was just a wild challenge. It was just ridiculous. It wasn't something that was particularly lucrative or anything. These were just a crazy encounter, especially when you got two of them at once, and you would just end up absolutely overwhelmed, running away from monsters that were really dangerous. If they're spawning in smaller numbers, then those fights are going to be quite a bit easier, and they're also going to be quite a bit quicker, especially if you're undergeared for them. Autocrafting Station displays the amount of life force that you've got available. This is just a simple quality of life buff. And then there's a couple of really, really minor changes that have been made here. Then there's a number of bug fixes. Anyways, I think this is a decent package of changes overall. Looking forward to seeing it go live. But I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I'll see you around.